Hey, everybody, and welcome to this session of Underscore. Today, we have been talking about all things ending 2024 well, setting up 2025 well, and I'm really excited to talk to you all about getting and maintaining buy-in for customer education. So for your program, maybe it's tools and technology. How do we help people understand this thing that we call customer education, where they really want to back it with time, resources, headcount, budget, all those things. And so I'm very excited today to introduce you to our panel. But before we do that, some quick housekeeping. So first of all, this webinar is being recorded. So if you have to hop off at some point, you have a meeting, all good. We'll send you the recording. It'll actually be right here on the page that you're on right now, and you'll get an email with the recording after the webinar is over. We have a lot of questions that y'all submitted in advance, so we're going to go through those questions first. But if you do have questions, there's a Q&A box in the sidebar, or sorry, underneath your video. It's the sidebar for us. Underneath your video, you can submit a question. So we'd love to hear from you. Also, just let us know, where are you calling in from? We were just talking about this, like, whoa, wait a minute. Everybody's calling in from everywhere. So if you want to take a moment to introduce yourself, where you're calling in from, you can use that questions box to do so. Also underneath this video, there's an opportunity for you to rate the session. Let us know, what did you think? So I'll remind you of that later on. It's also a place where you can tell us your feedback, your thoughts, what you want to hear more about. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panel, and they're going to introduce themselves a little bit more before we get into questions. So we have Niyati Shah, and she's the Senior Director of Education Services at GitLab, and has a really cool story, I won't ruin it, about getting buy-in that's just very relevant and applicable in this exact moment. So she's going to share from her experiences there. We have Kim Seal, who's a Senior Manager of Customer Education and Technical Documentation at Drata, but she and her husband have been in customer education for a long time. So she has some thoughts on, and you recently joined Drata a couple months ago, so doing this again. And then Barbara Fanning is the Director of Partner Experience and Enablement at Stack Sports. Just an incredible wealth of knowledge. And so she's going to be sharing as well about her experience getting and maintaining buy-in as she's grown her program. So I'll let you each, if you want to, maybe we'll go in this order again, tell us a little bit more about yourselves, what brings you here today, and then we'll just dive into our questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon. I'm really excited to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Niyati Shah. I head the education services team here at GitLab. This is actually a really great time to come because as of November 1st, I have moved into a new role, which is digital success. So that's an expansion of education services. So I'm really excited to kind of share, talking about buy-in, how do we ensure we provide value and show value for education services. So I'm excited to share more about this transition and this new role and the new team that I'm building out.
Hey everybody, I'm Kim Seal, and like Shannon said, I'm at Drata, the first hire for customer education, and have recently had the technical documentation technical writer join me as well. So very excited about what we're building at Drata. Yeah, and I'm here because I would do anything for Shannon.
Nice. Hi, my name is Barbara Fanning, and I'm the Director of Partner Experience and Enablement at Stack Sports. We are a SaaS company that delivers technology solutions to youth sports organizations. So a little bit of a different spin. I've been with Stack for about 7.5 years, and I currently oversee the education function, which includes all kinds of things. It includes our onboarding and activation, our instructor-led training, our one-on-one trainings, our webinars, our in-app messaging, as well as our knowledge base, and our Sports Connect Academy, which is our on-demand training program. And then before joining Stack, I actually worked with several different nonprofits, as well as the California Community College system on workforce development programs. Super excited to be here, honored to be here with such an amazing group of folks. Looking forward to sharing some of my experiences with you, and thanks for having me.
Awesome. I am so stoked. Okay, I'm going to pull up the questions, and y'all had a lot of questions. So we're going to try to get through as many as we can. All right, Niyati, this first question is for you. How do you align your customer education initiatives with broader organizational goals and priorities to ensure executive buy-in?
Yeah, so here at GitLab, when I joined GitLab, the education program was already in flight, and the conversation was around how do we scale this program to meet our larger customer needs and what we have. So I genuinely believe that for education services, education in general, right? Whether it be in a form of customer success, whether it's in form of training itself, or broader context that Barbara shared with us. I think it's really important to align with customer goals, the company goals as well. I think sometimes when we're in customer education, we're so focused on product feature adoption that we sometimes don't think about the larger, broader picture. So in order to ensure that we have the buy-in here at GitLab, what I tend to do is ensure anything that we're building, anything that we're doing clearly aligns with a company initiative, a company pain point, or a company driver that we're focused towards. And that's one area. The other area that I focus on is focusing on customer outcomes versus, again, that product feature, training itself. So that's one way that I ensure that like our goals and what we're doing supports to larger organization. There always has to be a very clear line to the company goals.
If I can ask a follow-up question, because I recently realized this. I think I have been privileged to work for companies that clearly stated at all hands meetings what the company goals are. But then I've heard from a number of people that their companies don't always do that. So do you have any advice for people? Maybe those, company goals are shrouded in mystery, how they can go about figuring out what those organizational priorities are, goals, initiatives, like you were talking about.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that you're absolutely right. There are some companies like GitLab, for example, there are very, clear goals that are set on a fiscal year basis, right? And what we call them is yearlies. And they are, I think last year we had 16 goals. And we realized that, again, that's as good as not having goals. And so this year we have nailed it down to 3. So last year when we were looking at these 16 goals, and they were all over the place, right? I'll be very honest with you from that perspective, that we didn't know, is there a clear KPI behind it? How are they gauging the success of like this initiative or this focus that they have? So at that point in time, what I did is, when in doubt, I always follow the money. And so I actually focused on customer success and on sales. What are some of our emerging markets? Which markets are we having the most amount of exception handling? So what I did is I have access to Salesforce and all of our sales data. So what I did is I pulled that data and actually saw how many opportunities were closed lost in a given quarter, and kind of analyze them a little bit. And then based on that, I determined myself that, okay, I think I can help in this specific area or this focus. And so sometimes what I do is, sometimes you have to go farming yourself in figuring out. And then once I narrowed it down to like 3 areas that I think we could potentially impact for some of the pain points that we're having now, that's when I went to our executives with a plan in place, saying like, hey, here's what I saw. After doing this analysis, I feel like education program, like I can build out, for example, one of the focus last year was CI adoption. That is part of one area of our product, because we are a larger platform that is meant for developers. And a portion of that software development lifecycle is the CI, which is continuous integration of your software development lifecycle. And so that was an initiative that we saw was really important within the organization, because we had low scoring in many of our customer accounts. And what we historically have seen is that customers that adopt CI are a stronger, more stickier customer. So what we did is we actually ran a sponsorship program where we took 25 top customers that were quote unquote red in the CI adoption piece, and we gave them 1 day of free instructor-led training on CI adoption, right? And our goal from targeting specifically those customers is being able to see, within like 3 months after training and within 6 months after training, what is the health of these accounts, and are we able to move the needle on that? What we ended up seeing is that 50% of our customers ended up going from quote unquote red to green. And so that's an impact that we can show. So that's an example that, sometimes when you don't have a clear vision and idea about what those KPIs are, what am I driving towards, what are those big rocks within the company, maybe farm for yourself and see where maybe the programs that you already have can maybe impact.
That's incredible. Yeah, Tom was just talking in the last session about learning the basics of Salesforce reporting so you can do that, prove the value of your programs, but also farm that information and figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Can you share an example of a metric or result that helped you demonstrate the value of customer education to decision makers? So Kim, I'll kick it over to you first.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Yeah, this is a great segue based on what Nyati was just saying about coming in and thinking about like, where can I help? How can I help? And what's the pain point? I was thinking about in one of my former roles, I reported up to professional services, and the professional services team was delivering a lot of the instructor-led training, but that's all it was. And there was no customer education program at all. So they brought me in with the thought of, okay, Kim will learn the product and then teach just like these other guys are teaching. And we started that way, but then I quickly realized that we've got like 18 or so professional services consultants around the world that are spending a lot of time standing up, doing all of the training operations work, the emailing, trying to figure out when the next class was going to be, trying to schedule the next class. Everybody was maintaining their own instructor deck for the 4-day class that they were teaching. It was like everybody was having to stand up their own lab environment. So I did a survey among all of the other professional services consultants, and I said, how many hours are you guys spending doing all of these things that if I could take that off your plate, how much money would we save as a company based on just recoverable, billable hours? Mm-hmm. So the first metric that we looked at was just how much time are they spending where they could be billing. And it was it wasn't a metric for, training is accomplishing this, because there wasn't anything being measured for training at all at that point. So we just started with what was easy to count. A lot of times people will start with, low hanging fruit, or they get kind of hung up on causation versus correlation or whatever. We didn't have any of that. There was no data. There was no BI. There was no metrics. The only thing that we could count was how much time the professional services team was spending delivering training. So I did the survey. I took that and I went back to my leadership team and I said, if you'll let me launch an academy, I can, I can put a roll-off schedule for instructor-led training. We can do a virtual lab. So we connected infrastructure with a lab environment, and I can streamline all of these processes that these guys are doing and save them tons of hours. So we were able to do that, and then quickly followed with turning that 4-day instructor-led training course into a digital on-demand course. And so I was able to hire a learning experience designer, and really with just 3 of us, just me, 1 LXD, and 1 full-time instructor, we were able to recover $500,000 of PS money, plus turn right around and grow our training revenue from like $200K to over 1.3 million in about 18 months. So, later, after all of that, we started talking about, okay, are we having quicker time to value? Are we having a ticket deflection? All the things that you typically think about, we kind of went about it maybe backwards, but it made an impact.
It sounds like you took Nyati's advice, followed the money.
Yeah, I did. Exactly.
And Barbara, what about for you? I'll repeat the question. Can you share an example of a metric or result that helped you demonstrate the value of customer education to decision makers?
Yeah, of course. So because we work with sports organizations, we work with a lot of national governing bodies that have clubs and leagues that roll up to them. So one of the things we were able to do in our academy is we were able to see that there was an adoption from all of these leagues and clubs that were part of one of our largest national governing bodies. So it was super exciting to show that this national governing body and their leagues and clubs were bought in with our academy. So it was really easy to say, hey, if these guys are bought in, don't you want to be bought in? So it was kind of cool to be able to see this data and show that, this partner is using our tools and resources. So let's see if we can't expand on this more and grow it across for other partners along the way.
That's awesome. And I love that there's kind of qualitative and quantitative data points that you can point to. I think that demonstrates thinking creatively too about the impact that education can have and how you can use data to bring other people along into your programs. All right, Nianti, another question for you. What are some common objections or challenges you've encountered when seeking buy-in, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think the most common one that I face is individuals not really understanding being fully aware of how product adoption, how can we impact product adoption through education, right? And addressing like broader need. And I think that's the challenge that I had, even though there was like, say, for example, even in my current company and my previous companies where the notion of, training and education was there, but I don't think that individuals understood exactly what is the impact, how can we. So when you come up with these plans, just assuming, being in this industry for so long, I just assume that individuals are aware of the impact of education, right? And I think that that was a piece where I had to take a step back and build credibility myself by demonstrating, how are we impacting? Like I'm saying I'm going to impact, support deflection. I'm saying that I'm going to impact, adoption of a specific feature, but how am I doing that? And so there was a lot of communication and conversation that goes into the how we're going to do it, right? So there was, so I normally, what I do right now is I run these like 1-pager monthly memos for our executive team to keep them apprised of saying, here are the things that we're doing and why does it matter to you, right? And why does it matter to the customer? So every time that we're doing something, we always put it out there to the executive. It's like, what's in it for you? What's in it for the customer? And what's in it for sales? And again, I cannot stress enough that at least, and I do want to caveat this, right? All the organizations that I've worked with, they are, SaaS companies, and our target audience is developers. And so please take it with a fistful of salt to what I'm saying, because these are the industries that I have worked with. But historically with these industries, what I have seen is actually just showing why does it matter to the execs, why does it matter to the customer, and why does it matter to our sales team has really helped me build that buy-in over time, help me with support over time.
I was reading an article and Evan Hall pulled out this quote that the author wrote around education opens minds and training fills them, or on the idea of education is teaching the why and then training doing more of the what and the how, and how we need that blend of both for good programs. And I think taking that same mindset into our interaction with stakeholders of not just what we're doing and how it's getting done and the metrics, but we're actually bringing it back to, well, why does this matter to you? In the same way that we would tell a customer, well, here's why this training matters to you, why you should be involved.
Yeah, I think, Jen, that's a really great call out, because that is actually the underlying mentality that I'm using. It's if I need to bring users to the table to actually consume my content, how do I pique their interest right off, like from like the one headline, right? And then how do I ensure that they're consuming subsequent pieces to get everything that they need to do? So a lot of the education, pedagogy that we learn, I'm actually putting that to my internal stakeholders to ensure that they have that information and they're consuming the full information.
I love that. The application in multiple areas is so good. Okay, next question is, how do you maintain leadership support for customer education as the program evolves and scales? And Barbara, if you want to start us off on this one.
Yeah, that's a big question. So I think one of the most important parts of this is being able to tell your story. And when I talk about telling your story, you need to craft your story first. And what does that story look like? So when we look at crafting our story, the first thing we do, and thinking back to what Nianti said about what is important to executives? What do they want to know? And then what's important to other teams and what do they want to know? So you need to craft this story that's going to resonate with these internal folks to continue to have that buy-in. And I think the most obvious thing we want to do is, yes, we want to connect the dots and correlate with business goals and objectives always. And as I say that out loud, I think everyone in this webinar and on this panel will tell you that is much easier said than done. Right. So it's not always that easy to get your data. So I really appreciate the farming idea and going out and seeking out that data that you need. So we can get some data from Salesforce and from our CRM that shows us different things. But am I able to go in and say, yes, my customer education program has deflected support volume by X? Nope, can't say that. I can make some assumptions, but I cannot say that with pure data. So what we like to do, and I encourage all of the folks in this webinar to do, is find the data that you can get. So what data is available to you to start to tell your story? And it's okay if you don't have all the data points today. You really just need to start telling your story. And when we talk about different data that we can get, think about your tech stack. What data can you get from your tech stack? What information can you get from your help center? What information can you get from your LMS? What information can you get from your video host or even from social media? That will tell you all kinds of great things. For example, we use our LMS data to show us how many registered learners we have. And we also use our LMS data to show us course enrollments. And that's great. So what that lets us know is how many of our customers are engaging with our content and what content is resonating with them. So that's a really good start for us to tell our story. The other piece that we like to look at is feedback from other teams as well as other resources. We are really fortunate that we have a great way of seeing our NPS and our CSAT scores. Mm-hmm. And when we ask about NPS and we ask about CSAT, we also have feedback. So folks can give us additional feedback and information. And we can go through and we can aggregate that information based on theme and say, what are people talking about when it comes to support, customer education, webinars, training? What does that look like? And we're able to get a lot of really great feedback, from folks that are telling us exactly what they're feeling. And, we work with a lot of volunteers, parents, and folks who are running sports organizations for their kids. So they have full-time jobs. So they want to tell us, hey, I need help with this. And that feedback really helps to shape the story, not only for what content we can be providing, but also what's working and what isn't. And what's really cool about that is when you get feedback where someone gives you a positive review and they say how awesome your program is, and you get to tell the executive team that's gold. Yeah. So those are a couple of things that we look at. And then the last thing that we look at, because data is king and we know that, we may not be able to provide all the data, but we can tell a story. So when we tell the story, we also look at what is our education team doing? Are we creating content that is helping with feature adoption? Are we following the money? Are we looking at these features that are going to help our business grow? Are we creating content around that? And then the other part of that is, are we creating content that is increasing brand recognition and getting people excited about our brand and the products that we offer? And yes, we can all create content that says, this is how you do it, this is how you find value in our product. But some of the best content that we see out there that we're looking to start adopting is content that is not only teaching me how to use your product and find value, but content that is making my life better as a professional or personally. So really thinking about those kinds of things starts to shape this great story that you can tell your executive leadership. And then now that you have your story, what do you do with it? Well, you can't be shy. Guess what? You got to go tell every single person your story. And this means finding ways to get that information in front of others. So does that mean sending out a quarterly newsletter talking about your accomplishments and successes and all the great things that your team is doing? Absolutely. Is that being invited and always saying yes when you get invited to present at a meeting? Absolutely. And if you don't get invited, how do you get an invitation to the party? You've got to ask. You've got to ask for the invitation to the party so you can tell your story. So that's the advice that I can give around that. So you just really want to make sure that your program is visible and you're telling your story as often and everywhere that you can.
That
And that was a lot.
there's so much so good. I love, thinking more expansively about education beyond just how do we use our product, but that like, how does my life become better as a result, maybe of using this product or learning how to work better. But also the being visible. I know we're like, yes, like you got to go tell the story, right? Like if you don't read a book, like that story isn't told, you know what I mean? It just sits over there. It can be written, but people got to read it for it to have power. And I love too that you're bringing in the voice of customer. I just think those stories too, like in their words, are so powerful to hear from the voices of your learners. Niyati, anything you would add around maintaining leadership buy-in?
No, I think everything that Barbara said, like doubling down on that. One thing that I'll share that kind of just came to my mind as Barbara was talking about, data, right? So one of the data point that we had early on was just number of users from different countries and growth of users from those countries, right? And so what we did is, because again, we didn't have any other tangible KPIs, instead of saying like, okay, here are the number of new users that we have on the platform, here's the growth rate of our education platform. One thing that we saw is that certain countries, when we first launched, there were these like top 10 countries. And then, now that the academy is about a year and a half old, we constantly see a shift in which countries are moving up and down as our top 10 countries. And it was really great to kind of see is that there were certain emerging markets for us. And we saw that in those emerging markets, we were having a lot of traction where our marketing teams may not have had the traction that we were. And so that was really great. Again, to what Barbara was saying, we actually took that and made that into a story to how education is impacting some of our emerging markets and kind of like advocated for that story, right? Is it a strong story? No, but I think that it really helps to draw that picture, draw that like, here's how we're influencing, even though it's not a direct impact, here's how we're influencing. So we did that. Here at GitLab, we're a very Slack heavy company. So like, as Barbara was saying, staying top of mind, communicating in the channels where your internal stakeholders are is really important. So when we have a win or at the end of each quarter, I send out this like, here's a recap of what we did. And I post it in every single channel. I have a list of like 15 channels that I posted in. So again, even places where people are like, I don't know if I needed to know this. Well, I was like, I'm going to tell you anyway.
Love it.
Yes, loud and proud. Okay, so kind of continuing on this theme, Cam, if you'll answer this one,
Okay.
How do you talk about the value of customer education to other teams so they want to promote your education programs and participate, right? So we have other customer-facing people that are interacting with our customers. How do we get their enrollment into our customer education programs?
Yeah. I think Niyati already said it, but find out what's in it for them. Talk to them about what are they goaled on, what metrics are they pursuing, what's most important to them. So depending on the team, like right now, I sit and report up through customer experience and customer success, and so as a whole, we call that the customer success group. And anytime I'm talking to somebody in customer success group, I'm talking about time to value. That's a metric that the whole company is looking at right now. Is we've done a lot of data analytics, and we know that the faster our customers get to what we have identified as the value stage, the faster they can get through onboarding and implementation and into that value stage, the more likely they are to renew, the more likely they are to expand. And, we know eventually become champions. So everybody in that kind of part of the house is looking at time to value. So whenever I am talking to them and asking for help, I'm going to say, okay, if you will help me do this, then I will eventually, like Barbara said, not right now, we won't have that data on the front end, but eventually we'll be able to show that customers who participate in our programs will get to value quicker. And we're already starting to see that a little bit, just as it's very anecdotal, but like I do a monthly webinar and just did a little survey, just a little smile sheet survey, and but one of the questions is, what was most valuable to you? And so it's an open-ended question, and people are saying, oh, I had this wrong idea about this, but now I understand it this way, and thank you so much. And so every quote, every pull quote that I can pull out of that survey and then share that back to the CSG group, I'm doing that, letting them know, hey, your customers are coming to this course and they are saying, I've been with Drata. In my case, I've been with Drata for 6 months, but I learned something new because I spent an hour in your course or in your webinar. And so, just talk to them about what they are measuring. So in this case, time to value. Whenever I'm talking to folks on the product team, I'm always talking about adoption. It's very similar, but it's like a lot of times customers will come to us for one reason, but our product team is working super hard to create other solutions and other features, and there's whole other areas of the product that the customer may not know about because they're so heads down on doing the thing that they bought us for. So whenever I have an opportunity in my instructor-led training or in the e-learnings that we're building right now, and I've done this in the past, is introduce other features that maybe they didn't know that they were going to learn about, but we just snuck them in there. And I can't tell you the number of times in the past where I can go back and say, hey, somebody took this e-learning and I just happened to mention this other thing that they didn't even know we had. And now they're asking about that thing. And so I started talking about education qualified leads, and people were like, what's that? And I'm like, that's when somebody says, I didn't even know that you guys did that, but I heard about it in class. Well, I'm going to tell the salespeople and the marketing people that lead came from us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just talk to them about what's in it for them and where they are. What are they measuring?
Mm-hmm. And I love that education is so versatile. It could solve a lot of different business problems. And it's not the only answer to business problems, but it can significantly support. Okay. Niyati, this question's for you, but there's also kind of an extension in the chat. So I'll ask the question and then I'll give you the extension if you're able or willing to answer. What does a C-suite need to see or hear to be convinced that there needs to be an investment? And then Alicia had asked about getting buy-in from their PE board. So actually, I'll throw it out. If anybody has experience helping their PE board get on board with education, because their leadership team, it sounds like Alicia's leadership team is bought in, but it's getting the board, right? So it's like, how do we influence, like if leadership, how do we influence then another level that maybe we don't have direct contact with?
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to the original question and then kind of maybe expand that. So I think with C-suite, again, I cannot stress enough, in my experience, is really talking about that bottom line. It's about revenue growth. It's about, protecting ARR. It's about, progressing towards some of our annual goals, maybe on the product or on the customer experience side, right? And I think that the more we can show them that we have the tools and the programs to support those areas, the easier it's going to be, right? Now, what does that really mean? So for example, as I mentioned, I saw that there was this product feature, concern that we had, and I attached myself to it, right? I shifted my priorities and my roadmap to attach to that specific goal. I spoke to my direct VP and asked them for investment for the instructor-led training that we did for free, right? But that kind of also goes back a little bit in how I'd set up my program. We have a fairly nice margin for our instructor-led training, so that it gave me the time and the space to make some of those shifts and adjustments, right? So that's one thing. Another thing I tend to do with executives is I always like to have my academy attached to my own P&L, my own bookings and revenue growth, right? And what I like to do at minimum is ensure that my department costs are covered by the revenue that I'm bringing in. And so then it actually becomes a conversation. It's like we are a self-sustaining, team. We're not, we're not OpEx for you all because we're taking care of our thing. Then the conversation becomes around, all right, now that this team doesn't have to show value because we are showing value, we're bringing in revenue and bookings. And that's something that it took me a while to recognize, but C-suite recognizes that as value. That, okay, this team, they are able to bring in the revenue to self-sustain. They don't need us to self-sustain. So then the conversation becomes around, how can I impact the larger company goals? And so then it gives me the opportunity, gives me the space to build programs that do not 100% have to align with ensuring I'm showing value for my team, right? Because I've already shown value. Now I'm just giving you add-ons for that. So if you do have the opportunity with your programs, I would say spend the first like 6 months to a year in just establishing that revenue stream for your team. What does that mean? Because after that, getting significant investment can be focused on data driven, right? Then you can focus on saying, all right, we protected this amount of ARR, we protected this amount of churn, we help with support deflection. Then you can focus on getting and connecting that data, which all of us know we spend most of our career at our organization in connecting the data, in getting that impact. So that's what I would say. I just tend to again focus on like tangible business outcomes to get C-suite to buy into my program and to scale. And also sometimes talking about education in a different way. So again, at GitLab, for the past 2.5 years, I've been the Senior Director of Education Services. As of this month, I've moved into another lateral team, which we're building out a net new team called Digital Success. And I'm now heading out that team. And that again just has that broader expansion role where we're talking about time to value, talking about feature adoption, we're talking about churn retention. And we're also, one of the things that GitLab is focused on in FY26 is how we're not going to have CSM attached to every single account. There are many accounts where we don't even have a pooled model of a CSM. What that means is they have no CSMs attached to them whatsoever. They're completely on autopilot. And this digital success team is going to be specifically focused on that market while we're also serving our entire customer market as well. So again, kind of thinking about what you do today and spinning it just a little bit differently to show the expanded role and just how flexible customer education is and the customer education team members are. They're so flexible and we fit into so many different molds. I cannot stress enough. Like, I'm such a fan of our entire community just to see how flexible and innovative this group of individuals are.
And any thoughts on the PE front? I mean, I think we could think of it as, okay, my leadership has buy-in. How do I help them tell the story to their board? Has anybody had that experience? Any advice to offer?
Yeah, I'll just say one thing and then I'll quickly pass it over, is that what we did is we actually built out a really large, presentation for my leadership to directly present to the PE, right? And that was I had to make sure that my story was crisp. And again, it started out with customer pain points and then education, and then also bringing in other industry examples, right? So in our case, bringing in the example of Red Hat, bringing an example of like some of other, best in class like ServiceNow and others to kind of say that, hey, companies that are in our size, here's what like companies below us are doing, here's what companies that are at the same stage are doing, and here's what companies that we aspire to be because it's the next growth phase, here's what they have done. So based on that, here are all of the things that we can accomplish, and here's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So again, team, like, leverage the information that's out there. Look at companies that are exactly at your stage, look at companies that are below your stage, and look at companies that are the next phase where you want to be, and see their programs and use that as leverage in helping your leadership to have that strong rationale and information so that they can go to the board with that.
So good. So good.
Barbara, Kim, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I was going to say that's so good. I was thinking about the just the constant communication up to the board through the leadership. So yeah, I've done that in the past too, where I just had a recurring slide, which was basically the same information every month, but just with the latest metrics, and we did a little bit of everything. We did revenue, we did number of users, like Barbara was talking about with the Academy. Number of learners, number of certifications that we issued, because we'd set up the digital badging. And so, any number like that we could report, we just reported over and over and over.
Yeah, I say everybody wants to be on a winning team. And so anytime you can communicate like win, right? If you think that all we do is win, no matter what. And like, that's the vibe that, like people are getting from your team. Yes, absolutely. People want to invest in that. I totally was taking notes. I was like, oh, I love this idea of what are people, our growth stage, similar to us in the next stage doing, and showing that, right? Because I think we forget sometimes that kind of comparison or like competitive comparison can actually be really beneficial in showing where the opportunity is as well. Hazel asked a question, which is actually one of the questions that people had submitted in advance, which is, how do you get buy-in from senior leadership to allow subject matter experts to participate? So I think, there's like buy-in from a program resource standpoint, but now we're asking for people's time and they're not a line item on our budget. They're in someone else's. So how do we get that buy-in for them to give up their time as subject matter experts? And Kim, I think you had an answer for this one.
Yeah. I'm living that right now. So as the first hire for customer education at Dorado, we're standing up the program from scratch, and we are doing a lot of work with SMEs. And one of the things is that you can get people really excited about what you want to do and kind of where you want to go. So I think the first step is just a lot of vision casting. And what I'm learning is you can't assume that, we live in our customer education bubble and we understand it and we know what good looks like. But I think it's important to remember that not everybody lives in that bubble and not everybody understands what customer education looks like when it's really good. And, I can talk about an academy, but I have one vision in mind and other people don't even know what I'm talking about. So a lot of it to get buy-in from managers and leaders to let me work with SMEs, it goes back to what we've been saying is talk to them about what their goals are. What are your goals? Like whatever SME I'm going to work with, is it somebody from product? And I'm going to talk about adoption. Am I going to borrow someone from customer success to help me write a script for a video or something like that? Then talk to them about time to value and getting people through onboarding. If I'm talking to support and I need somebody to help me that's on the support team, then I'm going to talk about ticket deflection. And I'm just going to say, listen, if you will let me borrow you for, X amount of time, then this is what I will produce and I'll hand you the thing and then you'll be able to use that in your job. So not only will we work together to make our customers' job easier to do, make them awesome at doing their job, I'm going to turn right around and these SMEs will have tools in their belt that they can use for their day-to-day as well. One of the things that's real important to keep in mind is when you're asking for help is to be very, very clear about exactly how much time you're asking for and exactly what you want them to do and the end time. It's not just like, oh, I just want to use them for the next, 6 months. Like go, no, okay, we're doing a campaign, if you want to call it that. And over the next 3 weeks, I want everybody to, I'm going to ask everybody to give me an hour and a half worth of time to do just this one thing and make it very clear as to what the expectation is. I was talking to somebody earlier today and they said, I was working with SMEs that got real hung up on providing like these fancy, highly polished videos, as the sample demo video. And I was like, I don't need that. I just need you to turn on your camera and run through something. You don't need to re-record it 10 times. I'll do that. I'll do the polishing work. I'll edit it in my editing tool, whatever that is. And so just kind of let them, if we're working with SMEs, let them know, like, your part that you're giving to me may not be customer facing. I will turn around and make it polished. Together, we'll go get this script reviewed. I just need your brain dump right now to kind of get going. And then the other thing is to be very organized. Whenever I ask an SME to work with me, what I will do ahead of time is provide them the folder structure of where to put their stuff. If there's a template that they're supposed to follow, I will go ahead and work through that template a couple of different times so that I can give them some samples. Again, I don't expect them to have the vision. I will just do that, the first 2 rounds of that work myself. So then I can say, okay, I'm asking you to do the thing that makes it look like this. And they go, oh, I get it. I see it now. So we're doing this right now at Drata. I'm working with 12 different SMEs. We're trying to get 12 e-learnings done by the end of December. So I will keep you posted if we get it done.
I like what you mentioned about making it easy for them to participate, because I think often when we're asking for people's help, like, we need to do more of the heavy lifting, where I need your brain. I need the things that you know that I don't know, but let me do these other things, right? And
Yeah.
and like what you were saying, examples. I had a boss once who said, give people an idea of something. And I'm thinking about this image. I try to find it and I can't seem to find it on the internet, but it's when you say like a chair and one person's thinking about like a really cool modern chair, another one's got like a wheelie chair in the office, someone else got a wooden chair, and you're talking about a chair, but everybody's interpretation is wildly different.
Right.
And so giving people something to respond to, react to, so that they're sharing your vision.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Anything, Niyati, Barbara, that you would add on that?
I would just say everything that Kim said. I couldn't agree with more. That is gold, team. Like, I think that in order to get SMEs to contribute, if the culture is not there, right? Again, here at GitLab, the culture is everyone can contribute and everyone is expected to contribute. So it becomes a little bit easier. But in previous organizations, that's not the culture that I was accustomed to. And making it really clear, telling them exactly the effort hours that they're going to need, how they need to engage with us, where do they need to engage, what fidelity of content do they need to provide, like all of the things that Kim said, like they are so essential for a team member that's probably already strapped for time, feeling comfortable to say, yes, this seems like a tangible effort.
I will just add one more thing. Thank you, Niyati, for saying that. But I will add that for the group that I'm working with right now, I set up individual kickoff meetings with every one of them, because even though I had created like a video about this campaign and I shared the video and I created an Excel spreadsheet with everybody's list and I created the Slack message and the folder structure, all of that, I still met with them one-on-one. So I could just kind of go, it's going to be okay. This is not that big of a deal. I know it looks like it's really complicated, but it really isn't. And yes, it was a lot of effort on my part to meet 12 different times and say the same thing 12 different times. But now I know that there's no unclear expectation. Like everybody knows what is expected, and I don't have to wonder if they're going to be confused.
They're thinking of the same modern chair. Kim,
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And I like that you highlighted kind of assuaging the fear that people have. Like, we do tend to think that things will be way more complicated than they are. And when you can help to, whoa, okay, really just need like an hour and a half of your time. You can literally record all you want. Like, I just need this, and helping people, because that's such a huge part of working with people too, is it's not just like, what do I need from you, but like managing our fears, our personalities, our tendencies, and like actually just working with people.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to move on to a final question. And then, and Barbara, I think you had wanted to answer this one. So someone asked, do you start with a bottom up approach to getting ducks in a row before presenting to execs? Do you get exec approval first and then figure out the details top down? Is there a middle option? Like, what way are we going in terms of getting buy-in?
Yeah. So I'm going to say it depends. And when I say it depends, it really is going to depend on your executive team and your leadership team. I think Niyati said, do they know what customer education is? Do they know how it can make an impact for your organization? What are their priorities? What are they trying to accomplish? What are their pain points? What do they need to be doing? So when you start thinking about building a customer education program, you have to think about all of those things, but you also need to figure out, how do you connect the dots for leadership? How are you going to make them recognize that this program is going to make a difference for the bottom line, and it's going to make an impact, and it's going to make our customers more successful? And as an instructional designer, we all want to talk about Bloom's taxonomy and ADDIE. Don't do that. Don't do that. Your executive team does not want to hear that. Your executive team wants you to speak the language of business. So talk to them about how to connect the dots. If you want to talk about Bloom's taxonomy, give me a call. We can talk about Bloom's taxonomy all day long. But don't do that with your executive team or with your leadership team. And either way, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start thinking about connecting the dots and bringing all this together. And one of the things that we did, so for us, we were doing all the things. We had customer education. We didn't have an academy, but we had webinars and one-on-one training and help centers and videos. But we were managing that all in different teams. So it wasn't quite as integrated as we would have hoped, right? So one of the things that we did was we pushed to move all of these things underneath our customer experience department. So that's what we were able to do. And then we were also able to build our academy. But it wasn't something that happened magically overnight by any means. So we did a couple of things. And earlier we talked about farming and that kind of thing. So it was kind of fun. One of the things here was we planted lots of seeds. I talked about customer education all day long to anybody who would listen. I shared webinars, I shared books, I shared quotes, I shared statistics from all the people probably in this webinar. All of the great things that you were doing, I used that information to plant the seeds. And I shared that with my manager, and she shared it with her manager. And then the other part of that is we were able to get everything moved underneath our experienced team, but we still didn't have an academy. And the academy was something that I have been wanting to build for so long. So you need to be patient. It doesn't happen overnight. So you just need to be patient. But as I talk about being patient, you also need to be ready when it happens. So I had a plan for our academy for months, and I hadn't had a chance to present it. And I was like, okay, well, I have this plan. And then I was invited to actually present this plan to the leadership team. And when I did, I wasn't expecting them to say yes. And they said yes on the spot. And they're like, okay, so can we have this in X number of months? And I was like, okay. So you need to be patient, but you also need to be ready. Luckily, I had a plan, so we were able to move fairly quickly. But those are some of the things you need to know about. And then the other part of it is you're going to have to be resourceful, and you're going to have to be willing to compromise, because depending on how much your company wants to invest and how bought in they are, you may not get all the tools you need right away. You might have to say, okay, these are the tools I have. How do I use them to the best of my ability? How can I be resourceful? And it's okay if you have to compromise a bit. I mean, obviously, we all have visions of grandeur of what this program is going to be, right? It's okay to start small. And sometimes starting small is perfectly fine. It lets you do one thing really well and then expand from there. So that's kind of the advice that I can give. I mean, and the main thing is just start, just get started in some form or fashion. So
that is such great advice.
That
Such
is
great advice.
Yeah, 100%. Just start with that first webinar. Just start with that and go from there.
So good. So good. And, sometimes I think some of us in customer education, because we all love talking to each other about our programs, that it's tempting to compare ourselves to others where they are at their level and at their journey, and think, oh, I'm not doing enough because I'm not doing what so-and-so is doing. My program doesn't look like your program. And your advice is so good, Barbara. It's just so good. Yeah.
All right. So we're not going to compare ourselves. We're going to take it one step at a time. We're going to be patient. Niati, I know you mentioned too, like this digital success thing, you planted those seeds, been working on it for a while. And then it finally kind of came to fruition, and buy-in, and someone else had said this to me. They had a program that it took them 2 years. They had the business case, they built it out. They were kind of socializing it with people, but it took the business 2 years to be in a position to be ready. But as soon as the business is ready, he was ready to go because he had, already mapped out the plan. I know I have my own projects like that. Like I've been sitting on them for 9 months, and then day comes, you get to present, and they're like, go for it, go get that done. So timing is so key as well.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing there really quickly. That for me, when I was talking about, the knowledge hub, like the academy, it actually took an external forcing function for my leadership to understand that this is something we need to invest in. There was another vendor that was talking about a digital hub that they had, which was like in its infancy. And it took that external force for them to recognize what was already built out internally, and that we were at like 6 months to a year ahead of this platform that they were willing to buy for X amount of dollars. And I was like, you've already made this investment. So sometimes no matter how much you're trying to convince, sometimes you will come across that. And again, patience is just the game, unfortunately.
Awesome. Well, this has been a wealth of wisdom. I know there are even questions that we didn't even get to because this is such a meaty topic. I think you all did a great job addressing it. So thank you for joining us and sharing your wisdom and experience today. Thank you, everybody who joined who's going to watch the recording. Thankful for your time. Hopefully you learned some new things that you can take back to your program. Underneath this video, again, you can rate it. Let us know what you liked and what you want to hear more about. We'd love to hear from you. Also included under this video, forgot to mention it earlier, that there's a business case template. So made a little template that you can clone and use for your own program, and just put things in place for your own program. So hopefully that's helpful to you as well. And yeah, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks, Shannon.
Bye.
Thanks.